Tonight we begin with a journey into the salty, splintered, and thoroughly unromantic world of the high seas. We're diving into what life was really like during the Golden Age of Piracy. Forget the parrots and treasure maps Hollywood sold you. The truth, you'd probably last about 2 days before begging for a naval prison. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1718. The first thing that hits you isn't adventure, it's the smell. A thick, wet blanket of rot, salt, and unwashed human misery. It clings to the back of your throat, a cocktail of bilge water, that special brew of seawater, fish guts, and human waste sloshing in the ship's belly, mixed with the pungent aroma of mouldy rope, damp wool, and the distinct metallic tang of fierce sweat. The air is so heavy with it you can almost taste the decay. You're lying on a coarse canvas hammock, slung so tight against your neighbor you can feel his spine through both your shirts. There's no personal space. There is only the collective dampness of 80 men breathing, snoring, and sweating in a space smaller than a modern living room. Above you, the deck creaks like the bones of a dying animal with every roll of the ship. Water drips from the seams, a constant maddening percussion on the wooden planks below. This isn't a grand galleon from the movies. This is a stolen merchant sloop, a floating slum that rocks and groans with the indifference of the Atlantic itself. You are cold, you are damp, and you are already profoundly itchy. This is the pirate life, and you've been sold a magnificent lie. Let's start with the image in your head, the dashing rogue with a gleaming cutlass, a parrot on his shoulder, a twinkle in his eye, and a chest full of Spanish gold. He's captain, of course, charismatic, maybe a little cruel, but fair. He answers to no one. He sails where he pleases, drinks what he wants, and lives a life of ultimate freedom on the sparkling blue Caribbean. It's a fantastic story. It's also complete nonsense. The reality is so much darker, so much more pathetic. That freedom you're dreaming of. It's the freedom to starve, the freedom to get syphilis from a portside surgeon and die in agony. The freedom to have your leg shattered by a 4-pound cannonball and then be tossed overboard while still conscious because you're now dead weight. The adventure? It's months of mind-numbing boredom, staring at an empty horizon, punctuated by minutes of sheer pants-wetting terror. The treasure will get to the treasure. Spoiler, it's rarely gold. It's usually a hold full of rough spun wool, a crate of salted fish that's already turning, or if you're phenomenally lucky, a barrel of rum that the captain will hoard for himself. Your captain isn't a charming Errol Flynn type. He's more likely a former merchant sailor who got sick of being whipped for stealing a biscuit, or a press-gang Navy man who decided he'd rather take his chances with the gallows than another day of eating weevil-infested hardtack for the glory of the British Crown. He might be literate, but he's definitely paranoid. He sleeps with a pistol in his hand, and one eye open because his greatest threat isn't the Royal Navy. It's the man in the hammock next to you, who might decide he'd look better with your captain's hat on his head. And that parrot? Forget it. Parrots were expensive, fragile status symbols. If you had a parrot on a pirate ship, it would be dinner within a week. The only animals on board are the rats. Big, brazen, disease-ridden creatures that gnaw on your toes while you sleep and compete with you for the already meager food supplies. And the lice, let's not forget the lice. They live in the seams of your clothes, in the fibers of your hammock, in your hair, in your beard. They are your constant companions, a crawling, biting reminder that you are no longer a clean, civilized human being. You are a creature of the ship, and the ship is a floating ecosystem of filth. There's no soundtrack of swelling orchestral music. The audio landscape of your new life is a symphony of discomfort. The constant creak and groan of the ship's timbers, working against each other like an old man's joints, the snap of the sails in the wind, the shouted curses of the men on deck, the clang of the ship's bell, marking another miserable hour past. The gurgle of the bilge pump, a job so hated it's used as punishment. And underneath it all, the sound of your own stomach, growling for a decent meal. You don't swashbuckle, you swab. Your day is filled with the kind of back-breaking labour that would make a medieval peasant weep. You haul on ropes thicker than your arm, until your hands are raw, bleeding pulps. You climb the rigging in a howling gale, 100 feet above a deck that looks like a postage stamp, with nothing between you and a watery grave but your own slippery grip. You scrape barnacles off the hull until your back feels permanently bent. You mend sails with a needle that constantly jabs your fingers. You are a janitor, a construction worker, and a potential drowning victim, all rolled into one. The romance of the sea. It's a myth peddled by people who have never been seasick. Real seasickness isn't a cute little queasiness. It's a full-body revolt. It's vomiting until you're dry, heaving bile, your head pounding, your body shivering, while the world tilts and spins beneath you. And you still have to go up on deck and haul a line. There's no sick day on a pirate ship. There's only work, or being thrown overboard for faking it. So let's just put that romantic image to rest, right here, right now. Toss it overboard like a dead sailor wrapped in a spare sail. The golden age of piracy wasn't golden. It was damp, it was brutal, and it was short. The real story isn't about treasure chests. It's about survival. It's about trying to stay alive, stay sane, and maybe, just maybe, get your hands on a dry pair of socks before you die of gangrene or end up dancing the hempen jig at execution dock. So you've survived your first damp, lice-ridden night in the floating wooden coffin. The romantic lie is shattered, but the reality is just getting started. How did you even end up here? It wasn't a choice made from a place of power or dreamy ambition. It was a decision born from desperation, a last resort when every other door had been slammed in your face. Continuing on, let's rewind to the moment you signed your life away. You didn't just wake up one day and decide to be a pirate. The sea doesn't work that way. You were pushed. Maybe you were a merchant sailor who watched the captain hoard the profits while you ate maggoty bread. Maybe you were a navy man, pressed into service against your will, who grew tired of the daily floggings and the taste of your own blood. Perhaps you were an indentured servant who escaped a brutal plantation, or just a poor soul from a London slum with nothing to lose but the chains of poverty. Your options were grim. Work yourself to death for a pittance, starve in the streets, or take a chance on the black flag. It's not a career path. It's a final, desperate gamble when you've already run out of chips. The recruitment process wasn't a job interview. It was a conversation in a shadowy tavern, the air thick with smoke and the sweet, dangerous smell of cheap rum. A man with a missing eye and fingers stained black with gunpowder would slide onto the bench opposite you. He wouldn't talk about treasure or freedom. He'd talk about survival. "Tired of being someone else's dog," he'd grunt, pushing a tankard towards you. "We got a ship, we got a crew, we vote on our captain, we get a share, a real share." The pitch wasn't about glory, it was about basic dignity, and when you're starving, dignity is a powerful currency. Then comes the articles. This isn't a contract you sign, it's a pact you make with the devil, scrawled on a piece of parchment that's seen more blood than ink. The pirate code wasn't a suggestion. It was the law, and it was brutal in its simplicity. You'd make your mark, an X if you couldn't write, while the others watched, their eyes judging your worth. The terms were read aloud, a litany of rules and punishments. Steal from a crewmate, marooned on a barren island with a bottle of water and a single pistol shot. Bring a woman aboard in disguise, death, cowardice in battle. You could be flogged, keel-hauled, or just tossed overboard to see if you could swim home. But the articles also promised something you'd never had before: a sliver of fairness. The shares were laid out clear as day. The captain got maybe 1.5 shares to your 1. The quartermaster, the ship's surgeon if you had one, the master gunner, they got a bit more for their skill. But you, the lowly deckhand, got a full share. For the first time in your life, your labor would be directly rewarded. It was a revolutionary idea in a world of kings and masters. Of course, that share was usually worth less than the paper it was printed on, but the principle was intoxicating. There was compensation too. Lose a right arm? 600 pieces of 8 or 6 slaves. Left arm? 500. Right leg? Same. A finger? 100. They had a price for every piece of you. It was a gruesome insurance policy that made the constant danger feel slightly more calculated. They were literally betting on which parts of you they might have to pay for. It turns your body into an itemized list of potential losses. And then there was the question of courage. Or, more accurately, the question of insanity. Before you were fully accepted, you might be put to a test. Not a sword fight, something darker. The crew might demand you prove your mettle by performing some grotesque act of violence against a captured merchant captain, someone who represented everything they hated. Or you'd be forced to drink a staggering amount of rum until you passed out, proving you could hold your liquor and your tongue. They weren't just recruiting a sailor. They were recruiting a brother-in-arms, someone who would stand by them when the cannonballs started flying and the nooses were being measured. So you make your mark. The man with the gunpowder-stained fingers claps you on the back, a gesture that feels more like a claim of ownership than congratulations. You are handed a ragged, salt-stained shirt and a pair of trousers that 3 other dead men have probably worn. You are given a cutlass, a heavy, crude piece of steel that feels alien in your hand. There's no training, no manual. You are expected to learn by doing and by not dying in the process. In that moment, standing in the tavern with a weapon in your hand and a crew of cutthroats looking you over, you feel a strange surge of something. It's not pride. It's not excitement. It's the grim finality of a door closing behind you forever. You have just voluntarily stepped outside the laws of every nation on earth. You are an outlaw, a hostis humani generis, an enemy of all mankind. There is no going back to your old life. There are no letters home, no visits to your family. From this moment on, your world is the wooden deck of that ship, the men who stand on it with you, and the vast, unforgiving ocean that wants to swallow you whole. The articles are signed. The deal is done. You've traded the certainty of a slow, grinding poverty for the lottery of a violent, probably short but potentially profitable life. You follow the crew out of the tavern, the sounds of civilized life fading behind you. The only sound now is the clatter of your new sword against your leg, and the crunch of gravel underfoot as you walk toward the docks, toward the ship, toward your new, terrifying and profoundly damp destiny. The gamble has begun, and the house always wins. The contract is signed, the gamble made. Now you face the reality of your new home. That ship waiting at the dock isn't a sleek vessel of liberation. It's a waterlogged prison. You can't escape a cramped, rotting wooden world that will be your entire universe for months, maybe years, if you're unlucky enough to live that long. From there you take your first trembling steps up the creaking gangplank, and the true depth of your mistake washes over you like a wave of cold seawater. This is your first proper look at your new home, and it's small, much smaller than you imagined. The deck is a chaotic maze of coiled ropes, scattered cannons, and lashed-down barrels. There's no open space. Every square inch has a purpose, or more accurately, a tripping hazard. The masts tower overhead like skeletal trees, their rigging a tangled spider's web against the sky. The smell you noticed from the dock intensifies here, becoming a physical presence. It's a layered aroma, old fish, tar, the unmistakable funk of unwashed bodies, and beneath it all the sweet-sour scent of rot. The wood beneath your feet is slimy, permanently damp from spray and the bodily fluids of countless previous crews. You learn to walk with a slight crouch, a permanent stoop to avoid the low-hanging beams and tackle. Standing upright is a luxury you'll rarely enjoy again. But the deck is the penthouse suite. The real horror awaits below. To get to the crew's quarters, you have to descend a narrow, steep ladder, they call it a companionway, into the belly of the beast. The air changes instantly. It becomes thick, hot, and impossibly heavy. The smell down here is beyond description. It's the bilge, that foul cocktail of seawater, rat droppings, rotting food, and human waste that sloshes in the very bottom of the ship. It's a smell that clings to your clothes, your hair, your skin. You'll taste it in your food and dream about it. This is the ship's breath, and it's septic. There are no portholes, no windows. The only light comes from a few flickering whale oil lamps, casting dancing, monstrous shadows on the curved wooden walls. This is the forecastle, or forecastle, pronounced folk-sool. It's a low-ceilinged, triangular space at the front of the ship where the crew sleeps, eats, and exists. There are no hammocks yet. Those are a luxury on some vessels. You're more likely to claim a patch of deck, maybe a thin straw mat if you were fast enough to grab one, and that's your bed. You'll sleep shoulder to shoulder with 80 other men, a tangled mass of humanity. When one man turns over, everyone has to turn over. The sound at night is a symphony of misery, snoring, coughing, muttering, the scuttle of rats, and the constant gentle slosh of the bilge water a few feet below you. Your personal space is the area you can physically touch without moving your head. That's it. There is no privacy, no solitude, no quiet moment to yourself. Every bodily function, every argument, every moment of weakness is public domain. You'll watch men cry from homesickness, rage from frustration, and succumb to sickness, all within arm's reach. You'll learn things about your crewmates you never wanted to know, the sounds they make in their sleep, the specific odors they emit, the state of their teeth. Personal hygiene is a joke. Fresh water is for drinking, not washing. You might get a seawater rinse once a month if the weather is calm, but salt water doesn't clean. It just makes your skin sticky and itchy. You are, all of you, slowly fermenting in your own filth. And then there are the other residents. The rats are bold, the size of small cats, with eyes that gleam in the lamplight. They have no fear. They'll nibble on the leather of your shoes, your fingernails if you leave them exposed, and any food you're stupid enough to try to save. But the rats are almost preferable to the smaller pests. The lice and fleas are inescapable. They live in the seams of your clothes, in the wooden planks, in the straw of the mats. You are a walking buffet. You'll spend hours picking them off your body, crushing them between your fingernails, but it's a futile battle. For every one you kill, 100 more are waiting. Your skin becomes a landscape of red, itchy bites, and the constant scratching opens sores that then get infected in the filthy environment. The damp is your eternal enemy. Nothing ever dries. Your clothes are permanently moist, a cold, clammy second skin. Your blanket, if you have one, is heavy with humidity and smells like a mildewed cellar. The very air you breathe feels wet in your lungs. In the tropics, the heat below decks becomes unbearable, a suffocating blanket that steals your breath. In colder climates, the damp cold seeps into your bones, a chill that no amount of shivering can dispel. Everything is sticky. Everything is moist, everything is slowly decaying, and you are part of it. This isn't a ship, it's a slum that moves. It's a floating testament to human misery, a wooden box designed to slowly break your spirit through 1,000 small indignities, the itch you can't scratch, the smell you can't escape. The breath of the man next to you that smells of rotten teeth and despair, the constant grinding lack of space and privacy. You wanted freedom from society's rules? Congratulations. You've traded them for the tyranny of the rope, the wind, the rat, and the louse, and you haven't even left the harbor yet. The open ocean, vast and indifferent, is waiting, and it has so much more misery in store. The damp gloom of the faux Cecil still clings to you like a second skin when a sharp whistle pierces the morning air. It's not a gentle wake-up call. It's a command. You stumble back up onto the deck, blinking in the harsh daylight, to find the crew assembling, and there he is, the man you elected, the captain. And in the light of day, you see him for what he truly is. Not a hero, not a rogue, but the absolute volatile monarch of your floating wooden world. This isn't a navy ship where authority comes from a piece of parchment signed by an admiral 1,000 miles away. Pirate authority is earned, seized, and constantly nervously defended. Your captain might be a man named Edward Teach, Blackbeard, who weaves slow-burning matches into his hair to wreathe his face in demonic smoke before a fight. Or he might be Calico Jack Rackham, whose flair for fashionable trousers doesn't make him any less ruthless. He doesn't stand on ceremony. He stands with his feet planted wide on the deck, his eyes scanning the crew, looking for doubt, for weakness, for the slightest hint of challenge. His power is absolute, but it's terrifyingly fragile. He was elected by the crew, and he can be unearthed by them just as fast. This knowledge hangs over him and over you like a storm cloud. It makes him paranoid. He trusts no one completely. Not the quartermaster, who handles the loot and mediates disputes. Not the master gunner, who controls the ship's teeth. And certainly not you, the new face, the unknown variable. He sleeps in a separate cabin, usually with a barricaded door and a loaded pistol in his hand. His orders are law, but they had better be good law. Order the crew on a suicidal attack for little gain, and you might find yourself voted out of office at the point of a cutlass. His leadership isn't about inspiration. It's about calculated terror and pragmatic skill. He doesn't need to be the best swordsman, but he must be cunning. He needs to know the Caribbean sea lanes like the back of his hand, which merchant ships are fat with treasure, which naval patrols to avoid, which islands offer safe anchorage and fresh water. His most important skill isn't navigation, it's psychology. He knows how to read a merchant captain's resolve in the set of his shoulders. He knows when to run up the black flag and when to fly a false, friendly colours to lure a prize in close. He is a predator, and his prey is human fear. And then there are his whims. On a navy ship, discipline is meted out by the book. On a pirate ship, discipline is meted out by the captain's mood. One day he might be generous, breaking open a captured barrel of wine for the whole crew to share. The next, a man might be flogged raw for a minor mistake, the cat-o'-nine-tails tearing into his back while the rest of you are forced to watch in silence. The punishment isn't just for the crime, it's a reminder of who holds the power, a reminder that the democracy you signed up for has sharp, bloody limits. You learn to read him like a weather gauge, the tone of his voice, the way he rests his hand on the pommel of his sword, the silence that falls over the crew when he steps onto the deck. Your daily life, your comfort, your very survival hinges on his unpredictable temperament. A careless word muttered within earshot could land you in the brig or worse. He cultivates this aura of unpredictable danger. It's what keeps him in charge. The stories about him, that he's in league with the devil, that he can't be killed, that he buried his own mother at sea to save on coffin wood. These aren't just tales. They are strategic assets. Fear is his first mate, but he's not a fool. He knows the crew's loyalty is tied directly to success. No prizes, no plunder, no loyalty. So he drives you hard. He pushes the ship to its limits, chasing rumors of treasure, hunting the horizon for a sail. The pressure is constant. You can feel his ambition, his greed, his desperation radiating from the quarterdeck. It infects the entire crew. The hope for a big score is the glue that holds this volatile, violent family together. And the fear of his disappointment is the whip that keeps you hauling the lines. You are not his crew, you are his instrument. You are the muscle that pulls his ship, the gunner that fires his cannons, the blade that enforces his will. Your share of the treasure is the bait. Your vote was the illusion of choice. In reality, you live under a dictatorship, one that is only as stable as the last successful raid. You have traded the distant, impersonal tyranny of a king for the immediate, intimate tyranny of a man who sleeps 50 feet away from you, a man who watches you constantly, judging your worth, your loyalty, and your expendability. The whistle blows again. The captain points to a horizon empty to your eyes, but alive with possibility in his. "Make sail," he barks, and you jump. You all jump. Because in that moment his whim is the wind that fills your sails, and his ambition is the current that pulls you forward, deeper into the vast, blue unknown. The question is no longer if the storm will hit, but when it will come from the sea or the man standing at the helm. The captain's ambition may steer the ship, but it's the groaning in your stomach that truly rules your days. After a week at sea, the initial terror of authority gives way to a more primal, persistent dread. Hunger. The glorious feasts of pirate legend. Roasted meats, overflowing rum barrels, fresh fruit are another cruel fantasy. The reality of pirate provisions is a slow, grinding war against starvation, fought with weapons of mold, maggots, and despair. Your first meal of the day sets the tone for the entire miserable experience. It's called burgoo, a lumpy grey porridge made from boiled oatmeal or ground corn. It's served in a wooden pannikin, a small bowl that's probably been licked clean by the last user. The burgoo has the texture of wallpaper paste and tastes like damp cardboard. If you're lucky, there might be a molasses-like substance called treacle to sweeten it. But more often than not, it's just plain gruelish misery. You eat it quickly, before you can think too much about what might be crawling in it. Then there's the bread, or rather the hardtack. This isn't bread. This is a culinary insult. Hardtack is a simple flour and water biscuit baked until it achieves the consistency and flavor of a roofing tile. It's so hard you can't bite it. You have to tap it against the deck to dislodge the weevils that have taken up residence inside, then dunk it in your burgoo or water to soften it enough to chew. The weevils are extra protein. This is not a joke. This is actual, practical advice. If you're particularly unlucky, the hardtack has gone beyond weevily and has developed a faint bluish fuzz. That's mold. You scrape it off and eat it anyway. The alternative is not eating. For dinner, there might be salted meat. This is a triumph of preservation over palatability. The meat, usually pork or beef, has been packed in barrels with enough salt to mummify a pharaoh. It's so saturated with salt that it feels like you're chewing on a piece of the ocean itself. Before cooking, it has to be soaked in seawater for hours to draw out some of the salt. A process that does nothing to improve its texture, which remains stubbornly leathery. The cook, a crewman with no formal training, whose main qualification is a strong stomach, tosses it into a giant copper pot with whatever dried peas and shriveled vegetables haven't completely turned to dust. This stew, called lobscouse, is the centerpiece of your diet. It's always the same, it's always terrible, and you're always grateful for it. But the real enemy isn't the taste, it's the rot. Food preservation in the 18th century is a guessing game. The salt doesn't always take, the barrels aren't always watertight. Within a few weeks, the salted meat can take on a strange, glossy sheen and a smell that could stun a seagull. It's called salt horse, and not because it's actually horse meat, but because it's so tough and foul, it might as well be. You eat it because the alternative is starvation. Dysentery and food poisoning are just calculated risks, part of the daily cost of doing business. And then there's the thirst. This is the most terrifying part. Fresh water is liquid gold, and it turns foul faster than anything else. Stored in wooden casks in the ship's hold, the water quickly grows slimy with algae and wriggling with tiny, transparent worms. After a month, it's a thick, greenish broth that you have to strain through your teeth. You drink it because you have to, each swallow a battle against your gag reflex. Sometimes, to mask the taste, they mix it with beer. The beer is weak, flat and warm, but it's marginally better than the water. It's also a diuretic, meaning it makes you pee more than it hydrates you, creating a cruel, thirst-inducing cycle. This is where the rum comes in. The daily ration of rum isn't about partying, it's about survival. It's about anesthesia. A pint of strong, overproof rum is mixed with water and lime juice to make grog. The alcohol numbs the constant ache in your muscles, the pain in your gut from the rotten food, and the deep existential horror of your situation. It makes the weevils in your hardtack seem funnier. It makes the captain seem less terrifying. It makes the smell of the bilge almost tolerable. For a few blessed hours each day, the grog blurs the sharp, painful edges of reality. It's the only reliable medicine on board. The consequence of this diet is written on your body. Your gums become soft and spongy. They bleed when you chew the rock-like hardtack. Your teeth loosen. Old wounds refuse to heal. You're constantly tired, your body aching in a way that sleep doesn't fix. This is scurvy. It's not just a word. It's a slow, debilitating collapse. It's your body screaming for vitamin C, a substance found in fresh fruit and vegetables, two things that are virtually non-existent on a long voyage. Men die from scurvy. They die from infections that start as a simple cut. They die from dysentery brought on by foul water. They die from starvation when the food runs out or becomes too putrid to eat. So when you finally sight a merchant ship, it's not just treasure you're after, it's onions, it's lemons, it's a sack of potatoes or a crate of apples. The real prize, the thing that makes the crew cheer louder than any chest of silver, is a hold full of fresh, edible food. For a few glorious days after a successful capture, you eat like a king. You feel your strength returning, the bleeding in your gums stops, and life seems almost bearable. But it never lasts. The fresh food is quickly devoured, and you're back to the weevils, the salt horse, and the green wriggling water. The hunger always returns, and it's always waiting. The gnawing hunger in your belly is just background noise now, a constant companion to the real torture, the work. The fantasy of lounging on deck with a bottle of rum dissolves the moment the boatswain's whistle shrieks at dawn. There are no days off on a pirate ship. There is only work, sleep, and more work in an endless, back-breaking cycle that makes a land-based farm laborer's life look like a holiday. Your day begins in the pre-dawn gloom, stumbling from your damp patch of deck to the even damper world above. The first task is always the same, swabbing the deck. This isn't a light mopping. This is a full-body workout using heavy, seawater-soaked mops to scrub every inch of planking. Seawater, because fresh water is too precious to waste on cleanliness. The salt leaves a faint crust, but it's better than the accumulated grime of blood, fish guts, and tobacco spit from the day before. You work in teams, pushing and pulling the mops in a rhythm that quickly sets your shoulders on fire. This isn't about pride. It's about preventing the wood from rotting beneath your feet, the most basic, grinding form of self-preservation. Next comes the most hated job aboard, pumping the bilge. The ship is not watertight. It never is. Water constantly seeps in through the seams, joins the foul cocktail already down there, and must be removed. You take your turn at the bilge pump, a clumsy, heavy piston mechanism that requires 2 men to operate. You push and pull in a mind-numbing, soul-destroying rhythm. Your muscles scream. The pump handle is slick with the sweat and blisters of every man who came before you. The only reward for this labor is the faint gurgling sound of water being ejected overboard, a sound that means you get to live in this floating prison for another day. Men have been flogged for slacking at the bilge pump. It is that important. Then there are the ropes. Miles of them. Thick tar-stained hawsers as wide as your wrist, thinner lines for adjusting the sails, all of them crisscrossing the deck in a complex web. Your job is to haul on them, constantly. When the captain orders a change of course, you don't gently adjust a wheel. You and 20 other men throw your weight onto a specific rope, heaving with all your might until the massive yardarms high above you slowly, grudgingly, swing into a new position. It's a battle of human muscle against wind and canvas. The rope burns the flesh from your palms, leaving them a cross-hatched map of raw wounds and old scars. You learn to wrap them in rags, but the salt water soaks through, turning every cut into a burning reminder of your place in this world. You are a human winch. And then there is the climbing, the most dangerous work of all. When a sail needs to be reefed or set in a rising wind, you are the one who goes up. There are no safety harnesses, no nets. You climb the ratlines, rope ladders up the side of the rigging, using your hands and feet, while the ship rolls and pitches beneath you. 100 feet above the deck, the world shrinks to a tiny, tilting wooden platform, and the sea becomes a vast, hungry mouth waiting for a mistake. The wind whips at your clothes, trying to pluck you from your perch. The mast itself sways in a wide, dizzying arc. You work with trembling fingers, wrestling with heavy, wet canvas that snaps in the wind like a gunshot, while trying to keep your footing on a rope that feels thinner than your finger. Men fall. It happens. Sometimes there's a scream. Most of the time, there's just a faint, distant splash, and the work continues. You don't get a funeral. You get replaced. The maintenance never ends. You spend your afternoons oakum picking, sitting in a circle with the other crew, unraveling old, tarred ropes into loose fibers. The tar smears your hands black, permanently staining the cracks in your skin. The fibers are then used to caulk the seams between the deck planks, a futile attempt to keep the water out. It's tedious, mindless work that leaves your fingers cramped and your back stiff. Other days, you're sanding the decks with holystones, large blocks of sandstone, kneeling for hours, scrubbing until your knees are raw and the air is thick with abrasive dust that coats your lungs. The work is segregated by watch, but the cycle is relentless. 4 hours on, 4 hours off around the clock. Just as you collapse into your damp corner of the forecastle, dreaming of a few precious moments of unconsciousness, the whistle blows again, and it's time to go back on deck. There is no lunch break. You eat your weevil-infested hardtack while you work, clutching it in your tar-stained hands between hauls on a rope. The rum ration at the end of the day isn't a reward. It's a medical necessity to numb the pain enough so you can sleep. This is the pirate's life, not swinging from ropes, but hauling on them. Not searching for treasure, but searching for a moment when your muscles aren't screaming. The romance is the occasional fleeting prize. The reality is the eternal grinding labor that fills the days between them. You are not a swashbuckler. You are a janitor, a construction worker, and a high-altitude window cleaner, all rolled into one, with a cutlass on your hip that you hardly ever use. The work is the punishment for your desperate choice, and the sentence is life, or at least what's left of it. The endless labor of keeping the ship afloat is interrupted by a single, sharp cry from above. "Sail ho!" The word ripples through the crew like an electric shock. Every back straightens, every eye turns to the horizon. This is it. The reason you endure the weevils, the damp and the captain's whims. The hunt has begun. But the reality of the hunt is nothing like the swift, decisive attacks of legend. It's a slow, agonizing ballet of patience, positioning, and psychological warfare. The initial excitement is quickly replaced by a tense, quiet dread. This isn't a video game where you simply charge forward. This is a calculated risk where a wrong move means death. The first step is identification. All hands strain their eyes, trying to make out the details of the distant speck. What kind of ship is it? A fat, slow-moving merchant vessel, heavy with goods from the Americas? Or a sleek, dangerous naval sloop, its gun ports hinting at a broadside of cannon fire that could turn your wooden world into splinters? The captain and quartermaster are on the quarterdeck, spyglasses pressed to their eyes, their faces unreadable. The entire crew holds its breath, waiting for their verdict. This moment, the decision to chase or to flee, is a collective gamble with all of your lives as the stake. If the decision is to chase, the real work begins. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. The quarry might be miles away, a tiny white triangle on the edge of the world. The chase can last for hours, for days. The crew becomes a single, coordinated organism. Every sail is set to catch the slightest breeze. Men scramble up the rigging to adjust the sheets with a precision absent during routine drills. The captain barks course corrections, his voice tight with concentration. The ship heels over, cutting through the waves, every timber groaning in protest. You are no longer a janitor, you are a predator, and the adrenaline coursing through your veins makes you forget the blisters on your hands and the hunger in your stomach. But you don't just run straight at them, that would be suicide. A merchant captain isn't a fool. At the first sign of a strange ship closing in, he'll turn and run for the nearest friendly port or naval patrol. So the hunt becomes a game of cat and mouse on a vast blue chessboard. You use the weather gauge, positioning yourself upwind of your prey, so you have the advantage of the wind at your back. You might try to stay just below the horizon during the day, a faint masthead visible only to their lookout, closing the distance imperceptibly. You stalk them. Then comes the deception. This is where pirate cunning truly shines. You run up a flag, but it's not the skull and crossbones. Not yet. That comes later. You fly false colours. The Union Jack of Great Britain, the Cross of Burgundy for Spain, the Dutch tricolour. You are a wolf in sheep's clothing, pretending to be a friendly naval vessel or a fellow merchantman. You hope to lure them in close, to make them feel safe enough to slow down or even heave to and wait for you. It's a psychological game, and every minute that passes without them fleeing is a small victory. As the distance closes, the tension becomes a physical thing, thick enough to taste. The crew is silent, except for the necessary commands. You can see the other ship clearly now, the hustle of figures on its deck, the way it sits in the water, hinting at a heavy or light cargo. The captain makes his final assessment. Is it worth it? Is the potential plunder worth the potential bloodshed? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the ship is too well armed or too fast, and the chase is called off. The collective disappointment is a palpable wave of despair that washes over the crew. All that work, all that anticipation, for nothing. You watch your potential salvation, your dry socks, your fresh fruit, your moment of glory, sail away over the horizon, and you return to the mind-numbing routine of swabbing and pumping. But if the target is right, and the moment is right, the captain gives the order, the false colours come down. For a breathtaking second there is no flag flying. Then slowly, deliberately, the boatswain runs up the black flag, your flag. It might be a simple skull and crossbones, or it might be something more personal, an hourglass to signify their time is up, a bleeding heart, a skeleton toasting the devil. The message is universal, surrender or die. The effect on the merchant ship is immediate and terrifying to behold. You can almost feel their panic from across the water. The sight of the Jolly Roger is designed to paralyze them with fear, to break their will to fight before a single shot is fired. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the mere sight of the black flag is enough. The merchant ship strikes its colours, heaves to, and surrenders without a fight. This is the best-case scenario. A peaceful boarding, a rich prize, and no dead crewmates to bury at sea. But sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes the merchant captain is brave, or foolish, or has naval marines on board. Sometimes they decide to fight. And when they decide to fight, the hunt turns into a battle. The slow, patient stalking is over. The minutes of sheer, unadulterated terror are about to begin. The chase was the art. What comes next is the bloody, brutal science of violence. The black flag is up, flapping in the wind like a promise of death, but the merchant ship hasn't struck its colors. Instead, you see the frantic but determined activity on its deck. The gun ports are opening, revealing the dark, circular mouths of cannons. They're going to fight. The slow, calculated hunt is over. What follows is not a glorious sword fight. It's a short, brutal and deafening explosion of violence that will be over in minutes, one way or another. The art of the chase has ended. Welcome to the bloody science of pirate combat. The first thing that happens is the sound, or rather, the absence of it. The crew falls into an eerie, focused silence, broken only by the captain's shouted orders. "Run out the guns!" The master gunner, a man whose ears are probably permanently ringing, barks commands to his teams. You scramble to your station. If you're a gunner, you're hauling on ropes to roll the heavy iron cannon out through its port, the wooden wheels screaming in protest. The cannon is loaded, a process that feels agonizingly slow while a ship full of enemies is aiming at you. First the gunpowder cartridge, rammed down the barrel with a long staff, then the cannonball, a perfectly spherical iron weight that feels impossibly heavy, then more wadding to keep it all in place. The gunner pricks the cartridge through the touch hole and adds a fine trail of powder. He's holding a slow match, a smouldering rope, and his eyes are fixed on the quarterdeck, waiting for the order to fire. The world narrows to the distance between the two ships. 100 yards. 50. The captain is waiting for the perfect moment, the crest of a wave, when your deck rises. And there's dips, giving your shot a chance to smash into their hull, instead of whistling harmlessly through their rigging. The tension is a physical weight on your chest. You can see the faces of the men on the other ship now. They look as terrified as you feel. This is the moment you realize they aren't faceless enemies, they're just like you, sailors trying not to die. Then the world ends. Fire! The command is lost in the simultaneous, thunderous roar of your ship's broadside. The deck beneath you bucks and shudders like a living thing. The sound is not just heard, it's felt in your bones, in your teeth. Thick, acrid white smoke billows across the deck, so dense you can't see the man next to you. Your ears ring with a high-pitched whine that will last for hours. Through the smoke, you hear the satisfying, sickening crunch of wood splintering as your cannonballs find their mark. But you also hear the whistle of their return fire. Their broadside answers. This is where the chaos begins. A cannonball doesn't just punch a neat hole, it's a wrecking ball. When it hits, it explodes through the ship's side in a storm of jagged, foot-long splinters. These wooden shards become lethal projectiles, scything through the air faster than bullets. Men don't just get shot, they get impaled, they get torn apart. One moment a crewmate is standing next to you, the next he's a bloody, screaming ruin, a piece of oak the size of your arm protruding from his chest. The deck becomes slick with blood, and worse. The air fills with the screams of the wounded and the dying, a sound more horrifying than the cannon fire itself. There's no time to process it. The ships are closing, grinding together in a tangle of broken rigging and splintered rails. The cannonade stops. You're too close. Now it's time for the boarding. This is the part the movies get almost right, but they leave out the sheer, primal terror. You don't swing gracefully across on a rope. You clamber, you scramble, you fall into the mass of struggling bodies on the enemy deck. It's not a duel, it's a brawl, a melee. There is no technique, only survival. Your cutlass is in your hand. It's not a fencing foil, it's a heavy, brutish cleaver. You don't parry and thrust, you hack, you chop, you swing wildly at anything that moves and isn't wearing your crew's ragged colors. It's close, personal and messy. The sound is wet and choppy. You're not fighting soldiers, you're fighting terrified clerks and merchants armed with whatever they grabbed. It's brutal, ugly and over quickly. The goal isn't to kill everyone. It's to break their spirit, to kill their captain or their bravest fighters, to make the rest surrender. And then, as suddenly as it began, it's over. The enemy captain is dead or has shouted the words you were praying to hear. We yield quarter. The fighting stops. The silence that follows is almost more deafening than the battle. The adrenaline drains from your body, leaving you shaking and nauseous. You look around at the carnage, bodies everywhere. The deck is a charnel house. Some of the faces are men you drank with yesterday. Some are strangers you just hacked to pieces. Your cutlass is sticky with blood. Your clothes are spattered with it. The metallic smell of blood mixes with the gunpowder smoke, creating a perfume of violence you will never forget. You survived. That's the victory. But there's no cheering, no celebration. There's only the grim business of sorting through the dead, tossing the bodies overboard and assessing the damage to both ships. The prize is yours, but the cost is written in the vacant stares of the men around you and in the new permanent ringing in your ears. The battle was minutes long. The memory will last a lifetime if you're lucky enough to have a long one. You wanted to be a pirate? This is what you signed up for. Not treasure, not glory. This, the brief, bloody transaction of lives for loot. The adrenaline of battle fades, leaving behind the stink of blood and gunpowder and the hollow ache of exhaustion. But there's a new energy now, a greedy, hopeful buzz that pushes aside the memory of the dead men you just tossed overboard. The prize is yours. The boarding party has returned, and now comes the moment you've been dreaming of during all those months of weevils and back-breaking labor. The plunder. This is it. The chests of Spanish gold, the jewels, the pieces of 8. Except it isn't. The reality of pirate plunder is the greatest letdown of your entire miserable life. The first thing they haul over from the captured merchant ship isn't a chest. It's a barrel, then another, and another. The quartermaster pries one open with a crowbar. It's not full of coins, it's full of wool. Rough, scratchy, undyed wool. The next barrel contains salted fish, already turning and giving off a pungent odor. Another holds nails. Ordinary iron nails. Your heart, which was pounding with battle fever moments ago, now sinks into your tar-stained boots. This is the treasure you risked your life for. This is what your crewmates died for, a floating hardware store. This is the dirty secret of piracy. The vast, vast majority of plunder is boring. Profoundly, soul-crushingly boring. The maritime economy of the 18th century isn't built on gold and jewels. It's built on bulk commodities. The real treasures are the essentials that colonies need to survive and that Europe wants to consume. So you spend the next few hours hauling over barrels of tobacco, bundles of animal hides, sacks of sugar, and bales of cotton. It's heavy, dirty, and about as exciting as unloading a delivery truck. The romance of piracy involves swinging onto a deck with a cutlass. The reality involves developing a hernia, moving a 500-pound barrel of molasses. Sometimes, if you've hit a ship from the Spanish Main, there might be some silver, but it's not in neat chest-sized bars. It's in irregular, rough-cut lumps called piastres, or pieces of 8. They're heavy, they're blackened from oxidation, and they have to be carefully weighed and assessed. Often, they're not even pure silver. They're cut with lead or other metals. You don't get to run your hands through a chest of coins like Scrooge McDuck. You get to stand in line while the quartermaster meticulously notes down the weight and estimated value of each grimy lump. The accounting is tedious, and the excitement of holding real money is quickly dampened by the realization that your share might buy you a new shirt and a few bottles of rum, but it won't retire you to a plantation. And then there's the food. After months of salt horse and weevily hardtack, the discovery of a crate of lemons or a sack of onions is met with more genuine celebration than a bag of rubies. Fresh food is the true gold. A barrel of flour that isn't crawling with bugs is a king's ransom. A cask of fresh water that doesn't have worms in it is a miracle. The crew will happily trade a handful of silver for a single fresh orange. The most valuable plunder isn't what glitters, it's what keeps you from getting scurvy and dying with your teeth falling out. The real prize, the thing that makes the entire venture worthwhile, is rarely found in the hold. It's the ship itself. A sturdy, seaworthy vessel is worth more than 10 cargoes of wool. Your current ship is probably leaky, slow, and smells like a latrine. A new ship means a faster hunter, a more formidable platform for your cannons, and a slightly less damp place to sleep. The captured ship, now called a prize, is the ultimate asset. It can be sailed to a friendly port and sold, or kept to expand your little fleet. But selling it is a risk. It involves finding a corrupt port official, negotiating a price, and hoping you don't get betrayed and arrested in the process. The final insult comes when you start going through the passengers' and officers' personal effects. You might find some fine clothes, a silver pocket watch, or a pair of good boots. But these items are subject to the same strict shares as everything else. That beautiful wool coat you found, it goes to the quartermaster to be auctioned off to the highest bidder among the crew. The captain gets first pick, then the other officers, then you, the lowly deckhand, get whatever is left, usually a stained waistcoat and a pair of silk stockings with holes in them. You don't get to keep your loot. You get a monetary share of its value after everyone above you has taken their cut. So you stand there on the deck, surrounded by the mundane spoils of your victory. The blood has been swabbed away, the bodies are gone, and all that's left is the anticlimax. No chests of gold, no jewels fit for a king. Just barrels of goods that need to be stored, accounted for, and eventually sold through a labyrinth of shady middlemen in a lawless port. The thrill of the chase, the terror of the battle, all of it was for this. A ledger entry, and the hope that your share will be enough to buy you a few weeks of drunken oblivion before you have to do it all over again. The dream of retiring rich is just that. A dream. The reality is that you're a floating warehouse worker with a weapon, moving bulk goods from one place to another, with the constant looming threat of a noose as your retirement plan. The treasure isn't in the plunder, the treasure was the hope itself, and now, like the empty horizon, that hope feels vast, empty, and endlessly disappointing. The anticlimax of the plunder is now replaced by a new, more dangerous tension. The goods are all aboard, the prize ship is lashed alongside, and every eye on deck is fixed on the quartermaster and his ledger. This is the moment that truly defines a pirate crew. This is where the lofty ideals of the articles meet the gritty, greedy reality of human nature. Dividing the loot isn't a celebration. It's a high-stakes accounting session where a misplaced decimal point could end with a knife in your back. The process is methodical, almost painfully slow. The quartermaster, a man whose trustworthiness is the only glue holding this volatile family together, presides over the entire operation. First, everything has to be valued. That barrel of wool isn't just a barrel of wool, it's an asset. The quartermaster, perhaps with input from a crewman who was once a merchant, assigns it a price. The same for the tobacco, the sugar, the nails. The rough pieces of 8 are weighed on a small, precise scale, their value calculated against the known standard of a Spanish dollar. This part takes hours. The crew watches, restless and silent, as he scribbles in his book. The only sound is the scratch of his quill and the gentle creak of the ship. Your future, your entire reason for being here, is being reduced to numbers in a ledger. Then comes the first cut. Before any individual shares are calculated, the ship itself takes its share. This is the common fund. Money is set aside for repairs. New canvas for sails, replacement rope, timbers to patch the holes from the last battle. A fund is established for provisions. The weevilly hardtack and salt horse you all love to hate. This isn't a suggestion. It's non-negotiable. A pirate ship that can't repair itself or feed its crew is a dead ship. The crew grumbles, but they understand. It's the most responsible thing you've ever been a part of, and it feels deeply weird. Now, for the shares. This is where the pirate democracy gets brutally mathematical. The system is designed to be transparent and, in its own way, fair. The captain doesn't get 10 times your share. He might get 1.5 shares or 2 at most. The quartermaster, the master gunner, the ship's carpenter, the skilled men whose expertise keeps you alive and lethal, get a share and a quarter. You, the able seaman, the human winch who hauls the ropes and swabs the decks, get 1 single share. It's a more equitable system than any navy or merchant vessel, but watching the fractions get calculated is still a special kind of torture. You see the total value of the plunder. You do the rough math in your head, and then you watch as your single share gets whittled down by the common fund and the officers' bonuses. The number gets smaller and smaller, but there's more. Remember the compensation schedule you agreed to. Now it gets real. A grizzled old sailor who lost 2 fingers to a snapping line steps forward. The quartermaster consults the articles. 200 pieces of 8, he announces, and notes it down. That money comes out of the common fund before the final division. The man who took a musket ball in the leg and will limp for the rest of his life gets his 600 pieces of 8. This is the crew's insurance policy in action. It's a grim reminder that your body is currency, but it's also a powerful display of solidarity. These men are being compensated for their sacrifice. They will not be left destitute. For a moment, the greed subsides, replaced by a grudging respect for the code. Then comes the auction. The personal effects, the fine clothes, the silver watches, the weapons taken from the officers aren't just divided. They're sold. The quartermaster holds each item up. Fine wool coat, barely stained. Do I hear 10 pieces of 8? The bidding begins. The captain might want that coat. So might the quartermaster. So might you, if you manage to save any of your previous shares. This is where internal economies flourish. If you want something, you pay for it out of your upcoming share. It's a bizarre, floating marketplace where the currency hasn't even been distributed yet. The tension is palpable. Friends bid against friends. Rivalries play out in pieces of 8. It's the most capitalism you'll see until you hit port. Finally, the moment arrives. The total sum is calculated. The common fund is removed. The injuries are compensated. The auction proceeds are added. The final divisible amount is announced. A silence falls over the crew. This is the number. The quartermaster, with the captain standing watchfully nearby, begins to call names. You step forward when yours is called. You don't get a chest. You get a leather pouch. It's heavier than you expected, but not as heavy as you'd hoped. You feel the rough, irregular shapes of the pieces of 8 through the leather. You don't open it. Not here. To count your money in front of everyone is to announce your wealth, to make yourself a target for thieves or friendly loan requests. You clutch the pouch to your chest and find a quiet corner of the deck. This is it, the reward for all the misery. You loosen the drawstring and pour a few coins into your palm. They're blackened, rough, and stamped with a cross you can barely make out. This is your fortune. This is what you murdered for. This is what you almost died for. It's enough to get blind drunk for a month in Nassau, to buy a new pair of boots, and maybe, if you're careful, to bribe a governor's clerk somewhere. It is not enough to change your life. The dream of retirement is, once again, postponed. You stuff the coins back into the pouch and tie it to your belt, under your shirt. The division is over. The tension breaks. The crew's mood shifts. The ledger is closed. Now it's time to spend it. The weight of the coin pouch at your belt is a small comfort, a fleeting promise of future pleasure. But on a pirate ship, the future is never guaranteed. Your body is your most valuable asset, and it is under constant, brutal assault. The division of loot is over, but the real accounting is just beginning, the accounting of flesh and bone, of fever and rot. From the tense mathematics of shares, we descend into the dark, reeking world of pirate medicine, where the cure is often more terrifying than the disease. Your first introduction to shipboard healthcare isn't a person, it's a smell. It's the sweet, cloying odor of gangrene mixed with the sharp tang of vinegar and the metallic scent of old blood. This aroma emanates from the all-up deck, the lowest permanent deck just above the bilge. This is the surgeon's domain. It's dark, lit by a single swinging lantern that casts crazy shadows. The air is thick and still. This is where men are taken to be saved, or more accurately, where they are taken to die. The ship's surgeon isn't a doctor in the modern sense. He's a man who might have been a barber, a butcher, or a carpenter in a previous life. His qualifications are simple. He owns a set of tools and doesn't faint at the sight of a splintered bone. He is part mechanic, part fortune teller. His medical knowledge is a chaotic mix of half-remembered anatomy, superstitious folklore, and pure, desperate guesswork. He believes in the four humours, in bad air causing disease, and in the healing power of a good, strong amputation. Let's start with the basics. A simple cut from a rope, a splinter from the deck, a scrape on a rusty nail. These are not minor inconveniences. They are death sentences waiting to happen. The ship is a floating petri dish of bacteria. Within days, that tiny cut can become red, swollen, and hot to the touch. Pus wells up. The smell begins. This is infection, and there are no antibiotics. Your body's only defense is to fight a war inside itself, and often it loses. The infection spreads up your arm or leg, leaving red streaks like a poison map on your skin. This is blood poisoning. The fever comes next, a burning, delirious heat that makes you shiver uncontrollably. You hallucinate, you scream, and then, if you're lucky, you die. If you're unlucky, the surgeon decides to intervene. This is where the real horror begins. Let's say you took a musket ball to the leg during the last boarding action. The wound is festering. The surgeon's solution is amputation. There is no anesthesia. There's only a leather strap to bite on, a bottle of rum to dull your senses, and 4 strong men to hold you down. The tools are laid out on a bloody cloth, a saw, a knife, a hot iron. The surgeon works with speed, not precision. He cuts through flesh with the knife, then saws through the bone. The sound is wet and gritty, a sound you will hear in your nightmares for the rest of your life, however short that may be. The pain is beyond description. It is a white-hot universe of agony that obliterates everything you are. When the limb is off, the hot iron is applied to the stump to cauterize the arteries and stop the bleeding. The smell of your own burning flesh is the last thing many men remember. But what about disease? Battle wounds are dramatic, but illness is the real reaper on the high seas. Scurvy is your constant companion. It starts subtly. Your gums become soft and spongy. They bleed when you chew your hardtack. Then your old wounds reopen. Your skin bruises at the slightest touch. You become exhausted, your body aching with a deep weariness that sleep cannot cure. As it progresses, your teeth loosen and fall out. Your joints swell with pain. You hemorrhage under your skin, leaving you covered in purple blotches. Finally, you die, delirious and helpless, your body having consumed itself from the inside out. And the cure, fresh fruit and vegetables, is often just over the horizon, a taunting, unattainable miracle. Then there's yellow fever, malaria, dysentery. The tropics are a beautiful, deadly paradise. A mosquito bite can deliver a fever that turns your skin yellow and makes you vomit black blood. Contaminated water brings on the bloody flux, dysentery, which drains the life from you through relentless, painful diarrhea until you're a hollow, dehydrated shell. The surgeon's treatments for these are medieval. He might bleed you, believing that draining your bad blood will restore balance. He'll use leeches or make a cut and let you bleed into a bowl, weakening you further. He might prescribe a purge, a violent laxative made from mercury or other toxic substances that evacuates your already suffering bowels. The treatment is often worse than the disease. The pharmacy is a nightmare cabinet of horrors. Mercury for syphilis, which rots your mind and bones. Tar for wounds, which seals in infection. Crushed earthworms for bruises. Powdered mummy, yes. Actual ground-up Egyptian mummy for internal bleeding. Your survival depends less on the surgeon's skill and more on the random luck of your constitution. The surgeon is not a healer. He is a mortician who works on the living. So you clutch your coin pouch a little tighter. That money can't buy you health. It can't buy you a new leg or clean blood. It can only buy you a temporary escape from the reality that your body is a fragile, decaying thing in a world designed to break it. The real treasure was never gold. It was a body that worked, a mind that was clear, and a life that wasn't measured in the number of limbs you had left. But that treasure is long gone. All you have now is the hope that when your time comes, it's quick, and that the surgeon's saw is at least sharp. The surgeon's saw has fallen silent, but another sound now cuts through the ship, the sharp, formal tone of the quartermaster calling the crew to assembly. In the world of pirate medicine, your body is at war with itself. In the world of pirate justice, the crew is at war with anyone who threatens its fragile, violent harmony. From the bloody chaos of the operating table, we step into the cold, calculated theatre of pirate law, where the punishments are as creative as they are brutal, and the jury is the very men you eat and sleep beside. This isn't the law of kings or parliaments. This is the law of the articles, the contract you signed with your mark. That piece of parchment is your constitution, your Bible, and your death warrant all in one. It's read aloud at the start of every voyage, and its words are etched into the mind of every man aboard. The rules are simple, direct, and utterly unforgiving. They have to be. You can't have 80 armed murderers living in a floating wooden box without a very clear, very scary set of consequences. The most sacred rule, the one that carries the harshest penalty, is also the most basic. No stealing from your crewmates. On a merchant ship, you might be flogged for stealing a biscuit. Here, you are marooned. The punishment is as psychological as it is physical. The offender is rowed to a barren, uninhabited island, a tiny speck of sand and rock in the vast, empty ocean. He's given a bottle of water, a single-shot pistol, and maybe a knife. Then the boat rows away. He is left alone with the sound of the waves and the certain knowledge of his own slow, thirsty death. It's not just an execution, it's abandonment. It's being erased from the world by the very brothers you betrayed. The message is clear. Our trust is all we have. Break it, and you cease to exist. Then there's cowardice. In battle, hesitation is a contagion. If you're seen hiding below decks during a fight, or if you fail to follow an order to board an enemy ship, the punishment is swift and public. You could be flogged, the cat-o'-nine-tails, a whip with 9 knotted cords, tearing the skin from your back until muscle shows through. But a more pirate-specific punishment is being keel-hauled. This is a sentence that sounds almost mythical in its horror, and it's very, very real. A rope is passed under the ship's hull from one side to the other. You are tied to it and thrown overboard. You are then dragged underneath the ship from one side to the other. The barnacles on the hull act like thousands of razor blades, shredding your skin to ribbons. If you don't drown, you emerge on the other side a bloody, gasping mess, your body flayed open, almost guaranteed to die from infection. It's a punishment designed to be legendary, to be whispered about, to make even the bravest man think twice. For lesser offences, starting a fight, drunken disorderliness, disrespecting an officer, the punishments are more about humiliation and pain. You might be wooded, tied to the mast and beaten with a piece of rope. You could be put in irons, chained to a deck ring in a space so small you can't stand or lie down, left to bake in the sun or freeze in the rain. Sometimes, for a chronic complainer or a man who can't hold his tongue, the punishment is the mouthy bullet. They don't shoot you, They force a pistol bullet into your mouth and make you hold it there, a constant metallic reminder to shut up. It's psychological warfare with a lead payload. The trial itself is a bizarre form of democracy. There's no judge, no lawyer. The captain and quartermaster act as prosecutors. The entire crew is the jury. The accused is allowed to speak in his own defense. Witnesses are called. It's raw, messy, and deeply personal. You're being judged by the men whose lives depend on your obedience. Their verdict is final. There is no appeal. The tension during these proceedings is thicker than during any battle. A man's fate is being decided not by a distant authority, but by the men who snore in the hammock next to him. It's justice by committee, a committee of cutthroats. But here's the strange part. For all its brutality, the system works. The pirate code creates a perverse kind of stability. It's the steel frame inside the chaotic, violent body of the crew. It prevents the strong from simply preying on the weak. It ensures that the loot is divided fairly. It gives every man, from the captain to the lowliest deckhand, a voice and a vote. In a world where you have no rights, the articles are your rights. They are the only thing standing between you and pure, predatory anarchy. So you stand in the assembly, watching as a man is condemned for stealing another's share of plunder. You voted with the majority. You watch as he's forced into the longboat, his face a mask of terror. You feel a cold knot in your stomach. It's not sympathy. It's the chilling understanding that it could be you next. One moment of greed, one flash of cowardice, one careless word, and you could be on that boat watching your world, the only world you have left, sail away without you. The law on a pirate ship isn't about morality, it's about utility. It's a sharp, bloody tool used to carve order out of chaos, and it's always, always sharpened and ready. The grim justice of the ship is behind you. The weight of your share still heavy in the pouch at your belt. The captain gives the order, and the ship turns toward a smudge of green on the horizon. This is it. The moment you've been dreaming of through all the months of damp and drudgery, port. But the pirate port isn't a quaint harbour town with welcoming inns. It's a festering, lawless wound on the edge of the map, a place where civilization has given up and chaos has taken root. From the rigid order of shipboard law, we descend into the glorious, dangerous anarchy of your only sanctuary. The first thing that hits you as your ship glides into the anchorage is the smell. It's a complex, layered assault. The familiar reek of rot and salt is now mixed with wood smoke, exotic spices, roasting meat, and the overwhelming sweet-sour stench of raw sewage. The air is thick with it. This is Nassau, or Tortuga, or some other pirate republic, a place where every nation's outcasts have gathered to create a society with only one rule: spend your money. The harbour is a forest of masts, a tangled thicket of ships from a dozen nations, all flying no colours or flags you can't identify. There are no proper docks. You drop anchor and take a longboat to the shore, your coin pouch feeling conspicuously heavy with every pull of the oars. You step onto the beach and your legs almost buckle. After months at sea, the ground feels unnaturally still, refusing to roll and pitch beneath your feet. It's called sea legs, and it takes a few minutes to remember how to walk on a surface that isn't trying to throw you overboard. The main street, a muddy, rutted track, is a chaotic river of humanity. You see men of every colour and nation, escaped slaves, former indentured servants, disgraced nobles, and plain old murderers. They're all here. The language is a cacophony of English, Spanish, French, and African dialects, all shouted over the din of barking dogs, arguing merchants, and the constant twang of out-of-tune instruments from the taverns. Your first stop is the tavern. It's not a cosy pub. It's a large, open-sided shack with a sand floor, a thatched roof, and a name like the Smoky Dog or the Devil's Anvil. You push through the swinging doors and are immediately enveloped in a haze of smoke and noise. This is the stock exchange of piracy. Here deals are made, alliances are formed, and information is traded more valuable than gold. A man with a Dutch accent might be trying to sell the location of a Spanish treasure galleon. Another, with a scar where his nose should be, is recruiting for a new voyage. You keep one hand on your coin pouch and the other on your knife. Trust is even scarcer here than on the ship. But you're not here for business. You're here for the three things you've been craving: women, wine, and a warm meal. You find a space at a long, sticky table and slam your pouch down. The service is immediate. A tankard of something that might be rum is shoved in front of you. It's raw, powerful, and probably distilled in a bathtub behind the tavern. It burns all the way down, a feeling so welcome it brings tears to your eyes. Then comes the food, a wooden platter heaped with roasted pork, fresh bread that's actually soft, and a pile of oranges. You eat like a starved animal, juice and grease running down your chin, not caring who sees you. It is, without exaggeration, the best meal of your life. But the port is a predator, and you are its prey. Every pleasure is a trap. The rum is cut with water and God knows what else. The fresh food might give you a different kind of flux. The women, who seem so welcoming, are often working with the tavern owners to get you drunk, rob you, and leave you in an alley with an empty pouch and a new venereal disease. The merchants who buy your plunder give you a fraction of its worth, knowing you have no other buyers. The port is designed to separate a pirate from his money as efficiently as possible. The goal is to send you back to your ship, broke, hungover, and desperate enough to go out and do it all again. Fights break out constantly. An argument over a card game, a misplaced glance, an old grudge from a previous voyage, any spark can ignite a brawl. Knives flash, pistols are fired into the ceiling, men are dragged out into the street, bleeding. There is no sheriff, no watch, no law. The only authority is who has the most friends or the biggest gun. You learn to stay alert, to watch your back, to never turn a corner without knowing what's on the other side. For a few glorious, blurry days, you are a king. You sleep in a real bed, or at least on a straw mattress in a rented room. You have a full belly. You are drunk from dawn until you pass out. You feel almost human again. But the money doesn't last. It can't. The port is a machine built to consume it. Your pouch grows lighter, then empty. The hangover sets in, a pounding, nauseous reminder of your reality. The captain has posted notices. The ship sails with the tide in 2 days. Your vacation is over. You stumble back to the longboat, your body aching in new ways, your purse empty, but your soul momentarily quieted. The port gave you what you needed, a brief, violent reminder that you're alive. But as you row back to the ship, watching the chaotic shoreline recede, you feel a strange sense of relief. The port is freedom, but it's a dangerous, exhausting freedom. The ship, for all its miseries, is simple. Its rules are clear. Its dangers are known. You're going back to the damp, the weevils, and the work, but you're also going home. The port's chaotic embrace fades into a nauseating memory, the last dregs of cheap rum souring in your gut as the ship cuts through the waves, returning to the empty vastness of the open ocean. But the emptiness is a lie. You are never truly alone out here. The hangover isn't just from alcohol. It's from the sudden, sobering realization that you are now the hunted. The brief, brutal freedom of the port is over, and now you sail under a new, invisible flag, the flag of paranoia. From the loud, messy anarchy of shore leave, we enter the silent, chilling tension of being prey. The hunter has become the hunted. Every sail on the horizon is no longer a potential prize, it's a potential death sentence. That speck could be a merchantman, yes, but it could also be a naval sloop of war, built for speed and armed with more cannon than your converted merchant ship could ever hope to match. Its captain isn't some terrified clerk. He's a career officer, a man with a royal commission and a burning desire to hang your corpse from the yardarm as a warning to others. His crew aren't desperate outcasts. They are disciplined, trained, and fed by the crown. They don't want your loot. They want your neck. This constant, low-grade fear changes everything. Lookouts are posted in the crow's nest in double shifts, their eyes straining against the glare of the sun on water. Every conversation on deck is hushed. The sound of the ship's bell, which once marked the mundane passage of time, now feels like a dinner bell for the executioner. You find yourself staring at the horizon for so long that you start to see things. Sails that aren't there, the glint of sunlight on a spyglass. The sea, once a symbol of freedom, has become a wide-open plain where you are exposed, vulnerable, and constantly watched by an enemy you can't see. The enemy isn't just ships. It's the very infrastructure of empire that you've rebelled against. The British Royal Navy is the most sophisticated hunting organization in the world. They have bases, supply lines, and fast courier ships that carry warnings and descriptions of your vessel from port to port. Your ship's description, its sail plan, the color of its hull, any unique features, is likely printed on a broadsheet nailed to a post in every governor's mansion from Jamaica to the Carolinas. Your captain's name is known. Your face, or a rough approximation of it, might be sketched underneath the word "wanted" and the promise of a king's pardon for anyone who turns you in. You are not a ghost. You are a file in a bureaucratic machine that spans the globe, and that machine is grinding into motion. Then there are the hunters who aren't even official. Bounty hunters, privateers. A privateer is just a pirate with a piece of paper, a letter of marque, from a government giving him permission to attack the ships of enemy nations. But on the high seas, the line between privateer and pirate is blurry. A privateer captain who sees your laden ship might decide that the potential profit is worth breaking his commission for. He'll attack you just the same, and if he captures you, he'll hand you over to the authorities to collect a reward, legitimizing his piracy with your corpse. These men are often more ruthless than the Navy, because for them it's purely business. The paranoia infects your judgment. A genuine prize might sail by, but if the captain is too cautious, if he fears a trap, he'll let it go. The crew grumbles, your share shrinks. But the captain's first duty is no longer finding treasure, it's survival. He spends more time studying charts, looking for obscure islands, hidden coves, and treacherous shoals where a larger warship cannot follow. You find yourself anchored in mosquito-infested mangrove swamps for days on end, eating through your precious provisions, waiting for the hunt to cool off. The boredom is a new kind of torture, laced with fear. And the fear has a sound. It's not the roar of a cannon. It's the sound of silence from the lookout. It's the tense, quiet order from the captain to douse all lights at night. It's the creak of the rudder as you change course abruptly, sacrificing days of progress to avoid a suspicious sail. It's the sound of your own heart pounding in your ears when the cry, "Sail ho!" comes from above, and everyone holds their breath, waiting to hear the lookout's next words. Is it a merchant, or is it a man of war? When you do sight a naval vessel and the chase is on, it's a different kind of race. This isn't the patient stalking of a hunter. This is the desperate flight of a rabbit from a fox. You throw everything overboard that isn't essential, spare barrels, damaged boats, even some of your precious fresh water, to lighten the ship and gain a fraction of a knot of speed. The crew works with a frantic, silent efficiency you never see during a normal chase. All the fancy pirate flags come down. You run up whatever false colors you have, trying to pretend you're a harmless, loyal subject of the king. It's a pathetic, desperate pantomime, and everyone on board knows it. The Navy's gaze is cold, impersonal, and relentless. It doesn't hate you. It just wants to erase you, to tidy you away. To restore order. You are a flaw in the system, a glitch in the Empire's grand design, and you can feel the system working to correct you, to delete you from existence. The enemy's gaze is the gaze of the civilized world, and it has fixed its eyes upon you, and it will not look away until you are swinging from a gibbet, your body tarred, and hanging in an iron cage, a silent lesson for the next desperate soul who dreams of a life beyond the law. The Navy's gaze can be avoided with cunning, darkness, and false flags, but there is one enemy that cannot be bribed, cannot be tricked, and shows no mercy. You can feel it coming hours before you see it. A strange, heavy stillness in the air, a metallic taste on the wind, a sense of impending doom that settles over the ship like a shroud. The paranoia of being hunted is replaced by a deeper, more primal fear. The weather is coming, and when the weather decides to fight, you are not a pirate. You are a bug on a leaf, about to be washed away in a torrent you cannot control. It starts subtly. The sky to windward, the direction the wind is coming from, takes on a sickly, greenish-yellow hue. The clouds, once fluffy and white, begin to lower and spread into a flat, grey blanket that seems to suck the colour from the world. The barometer, if your captain is lucky enough to have one, plummets. The wind doesn't blow, it vanishes. The sails hang limp and lifeless. The sea becomes oily and smooth with a long, lazy swell that rolls beneath the ship in a way that feels deeply wrong. This is the calm before the storm. It is nature holding its breath, and you are holding yours with it. Then you hear it, a low, distant roar like 1,000 demons screaming on the horizon. The storm wall approaches, a solid black curtain of cloud and rain and wind that stretches from the sea to the heavens. There is no outrunning it. There is only preparation and prayer. The captain's orders come fast and sharp. All hands, furl sails, batten down everything, secure the guns. There is no time for fear, only for frantic, desperate action. You and the crew become a single organism, fighting for survival. You scramble up the rigging, higher than you've ever gone, as the first gusts of wind try to pluck you from the ropes. The ship is beginning to pitch and roll violently beneath you. You fight with the sails, wrestling acres of heavy, wet canvas, tying them down with numb fingers. The wind is screaming now, a high-pitched wail that tears at your clothes and steals the breath from your lungs. Rain comes, not in drops, but in horizontal sheets that feel like needles against your skin. By the time you slide back down to the deck, you are soaked to the bone and shivering uncontrollably. And then the real storm hits. The world dissolves into chaos. The ship is no longer a vessel, it is a toy, a cork, being thrown about by a giant. It climbs waves that are not waves, but moving mountains of black water. You look up from the deck and see a wall of water taller than the mainmast, blocking out the sky. For a terrifying moment, you are staring straight up at a cliff face of water. The ship struggles up this liquid mountain, its bow pointing at the clouds, every timber groaning in agony. Then you reach the top, hover for a heart-stopping second, and plunge down the other side into a valley so deep you can't see the horizon. The deck falls away beneath your feet. You are weightless, falling, waiting for the crash that will surely shatter the ship into 1,000,000 pieces. Below decks, it is a special kind of hell. The violent, corkscrewing motion makes it impossible to stand. You are thrown from one side of the forecastle to the other, a human pinball in a dark wooden box. The sound is unbearable. The shrieking of the wind, the explosive crash of waves hitting the deck above, the terrible splintering sound of overstressed wood. The ship is taking on water everywhere. The bilge pumps can't keep up. Icy seawater pours down the companionway, sloshing across the deck where you sleep. You are cold, wet, and convinced that each crashing wave will be the one that sends you to the bottom. On deck, it's even worse. The helmsman is lashed to the wheel, fighting to keep the ship from turning broadside to the waves, a death sentence. If the ship rolls over, it will not right itself. You will all drown, trapped in a wooden coffin. Men are swept overboard by green water, solid walls of ocean that crash across the deck. There are no rescue attempts. There is no stopping to look for them. To try is to die with them. You hear their screams for a second, and then they are gone, swallowed by the fury. The storm judges you. It tests every knot, every splice, every timber in your ship. A loose cannon, a 2-ton iron beast breaking free from its lashings, becomes a wrecking ball, smashing back and forth across the gun deck, crushing any man in its path. The masts, under impossible strain, can snap like twigs, taking sails, rigging, and men with them into the boiling sea. The rudder can be torn away, leaving you helpless, a drifting plaything for the waves. There is no surgery for this. No code of conduct, no share of the plunder that can save you. You huddle where you can, praying to a God you've probably cursed 100 times, making promises you'll never keep if he just lets you see the sun again. The storm can last for hours, for days. Time loses all meaning. There is only the roar, the crash, the cold, and the desperate animal will to live. And then, as suddenly as it began, it starts to ease. The wind drops from a scream to a howl, then to a gale, then to a strong breeze. The waves, while still massive, become less steep. A patch of blue appears in the sky. You emerge onto the deck, blinking in the strange, calm light, your body trembling with exhaustion and leftover terror. The ship is a wreck. Torn sails, broken spars, debris everywhere. But it is still afloat. You are still alive. The weather has spoken. It has reminded you of your place. You are not the master of the sea. You are a temporary guest, tolerated only until the true owner of this domain decides to reclaim it. You survived the navy, the battles, the disease. But the weather is the one enemy that requires no reason, offers no quarter, and always, always has the final word. The storm has passed, leaving behind a broken ship and shattered nerves. But a different kind of tempest is brewing, one that no amount of battened hatches can withstand. The shared terror of nature's wrath has faded, and in its place the old grievances return, sharper and more bitter than ever. The captain's leadership during the crisis is now being dissected in hushed tones in the forecastle. Was he decisive or was he lucky? This is where the pirate democracy shows its fangs. This is where the crew remembers it holds the ultimate power. The calculus of mutiny is being calculated, and the variables are fear, greed, and desperation. It never starts with a shout. It starts with a whisper, a quiet conversation between two trusted mates during the midnight watch. He hesitated before giving the order to furl the topsails, one mutters, his voice barely audible over the creak of the ship. A second later, and we'd have been dismasted. The other nods, his eyes dark. And what about that merchant ship last week? The fat one? He let it go, said it was too close to the patrol lanes. I say he's lost his nerve. These whispers are seeds. They are planted in the fertile soil of discontent, and they grow in the dark. The ringleader is rarely the obvious choice. It's not the loudest braggart or the most bloodthirsty killer. It's often the quartermaster, the man who knows the true state of the provisions and the ledger. Or it's the boatswain, who has the trust of the deckhands. Or simply a quiet, observant man whose opinion carries weight because he doesn't waste words. He's the one who approaches others carefully, sounding them out. He doesn't talk of murder. He talks of change, of a new course, of a captain who isn't so cautious, who will let them hunt the rich prizes, who won't hoard the best plunder. He talks of the articles, of their right to elect and depose. He wraps treason in the language of legitimacy. The planning is a delicate, deadly dance. It happens in corners, during meal times, in the isolated crow's nest. There are no written plans. Everything is committed to memory. They identify the captain's loyalists, the master gunner perhaps, or the carpenter who owes the captain his life. They decide who will confront the captain, who will secure the armory, who will neutralize the loyalists. The signal is chosen, a specific song hummed, a particular knot tied in a rope, a candle lit in a porthole at a certain time. Every detail is planned, because a failed mutiny has only one punishment, a slow, theatrical death. You are approached. It happens casually. A man sits next to you during the grog ration, nudging you with his elbow. "What do you think of our captain's luck lately?" he asks, his tone light, but his eyes deadly serious. This is your moment, your choice. Do you agree and join the conspiracy? Do you remain silent, which they will take as tacit approval? Or do you speak in the captain's defense, thereby marking yourself as a loyalist and a target? There is no neutral ground. Your answer determines which side you'll be on when the blood starts to flow. The pressure is immense. The wrong word, the wrong glance, and you could end up at the bottom of the food chain or at the bottom of the ocean. The tension becomes a physical presence on the ship. The crew splits into invisible factions. Men who joked together yesterday now avoid each other's eyes. The captain feels it. He must. He becomes more withdrawn, more paranoid. He surrounds himself with his known allies. He might start carrying 2 pistols instead of 1. He sleeps even less. The ship is a powder keg, and everyone is waiting for the spark. The spark usually comes from the captain himself, a perceived injustice, an unfair division of spoils, a punishment that seems too harsh. Perhaps he flogs a popular crewman for a minor infraction, or he announces a course change that leads away from known hunting grounds and toward barren seas. That's the moment the ringleader gives the signal. The mutiny itself is not a grand battle. It is a swift, surgical strike. It happens at a time of vulnerability, during the changing of the watch, in the pre-dawn gloom when minds are foggy. The conspirators move at once. A group confronts the captain on the quarterdeck. Others quickly and quietly detain the loyalists, often with promises that no harm will come to them if they don't resist. There is little ceremony. The captain is informed that he is being relieved of command. The articles are cited. His weapons are taken. Sometimes it ends there. The deposed captain and his loyalists are set adrift in a longboat with a cask of water and a sail, given a fighting chance. This is considered a merciful outcome. But if the captain fights back, if he insults the crew, or if the mutiny is born of pure hatred, then it ends in blood. A pistol shot in the confined space of the great cabin. A blade in the back on the dark deck. The body is tossed overboard without a second thought. The ship has a new master. The aftermath is a strange, quiet affair. The deed is done. The ringleader is now the captain. The crew assembles and a new vote is taken, often a mere formality. The articles are reaffirmed. The plunder is reshared to reward the key conspirators, but the victory feels hollow. You look at the faces around you, the same faces, but now divided by a secret, by a shared act of violence. The trust is gone, replaced by a new, more fragile hierarchy. You've proven that power comes from the barrel of a gun and the will to use it. And you've just taught every man aboard that same lesson. You are the captain now, but you are also a man who sleeps with one eye open, waiting for the day the calculus of mutiny is calculated against you. The mutiny is over. A new captain stands at the helm, and for a brief, glorious moment you feel invincible. You've defied kings, weather, and even your own commanders. But the world has a way of balancing the scales. Your luck, that fickle, invisible currency you've been spending so recklessly, is about to run out. The freedom of the sea has an expiration date, and it's stamped on a naval arrest warrant. From the brief triumph of overthrowing your captain, we descend into the grim, inevitable conclusion of the pirate story. The one where you are no longer the hunter, but the captured, the tried, and the executed. It happens quickly. A sail appears on the horizon, but this time there's no patient stalking. It closes with terrifying speed. It's a naval frigate, sleek and purpose-built for this exact moment. Before you can even run out the guns, a shot across your bow sends splinters flying from your foremast. The message is clear: heave to or be blown to pieces. There's no glorious last stand. There's only the crushing realization that the game is over. You strike your colors. The Jolly Roger comes down for the last time, replaced by the white flag of surrender. The fantasy of going down in a blaze of glory is just that, a fantasy. In reality, you'd rather take your chances with the rope than with a cannonball. The boarding party is professional, cold and efficient. They don't look you in the eye. You are not a person to them. You are cargo, property. You're forced to line up on deck as they search you, taking your weapons, your coin pouch, the one you worked so hard for, and any personal effects. Then come the irons. The cold, heavy weight of the manacles being clamped around your wrists and ankles is a sound and feeling you will carry to your grave. This is the end of your freedom. The ship you called home is now a prison transport. They herd you below decks into a makeshift brig, a dark, airless space where you and 20 other men are packed together, the chains clinking with every roll of the ship. The journey to port is a slow death. You're fed barely enough to keep you alive. The Navy doesn't waste good food on pirates. The conditions make your old forecastle seem luxurious. There's no room to lie down. The air is thick with the smell of fear and human waste. Some men break down sobbing, others sit in silent, stoic resignation. You have nothing to do but think, to remember every bad decision, every moment of violence, every time you could have walked away but didn't. The bravado is gone. The rum is gone. All that's left is the cold, metallic taste of regret and the certain knowledge of what comes next. When you finally make landfall, it's not a secret cove. It's a proper, civilized port. Boston, Charleston, London. The spectacle begins immediately. You're paraded through the streets in chains, a public exhibit. The crowd lines the streets, but they aren't cheering. They're jeering. They throw rotten vegetables, stones and spit. Children point and laugh. You are a monster in a cage, a lesson for the masses. This is the other side of the legend, the part where you become a cautionary tale, a sideshow attraction on your way to the gallows. The trial is a formality, a theatre production where the ending is already written. You stand in the dock, still in chains, while bewigged judges and prosecutors speak a language of law you barely understand. The evidence is overwhelming. Witnesses, merchant captains you let live, former crewmates who turned king's evidence to save their own necks, point at you and tell their stories. Your defense is non-existent. You have no money for a lawyer. You are a hostis humani generis, an enemy of all mankind, and the world has gathered to condemn you. The verdict is never in doubt. Guilty. The sentence is death by hanging. Your final nights are spent in a stone cell, listening to the rats scuttle and the drunken songs from nearby taverns. A priest might visit, offering you a chance to repent and save your soul. You might take it. You might not. Some men write final letters that will never be sent. Others just stare at the wall, already ghosts. The fear is a physical thing now, a cold stone in your belly that never goes away. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you just wait. The morning arrives, they come for you. You're given a last meal you can't force down. Then you're led through the streets one final time to the execution dock at Wapping or some other infamous shore. The crowd is enormous, louder than any battle. They've come for the show. The gallows stand against the grey sky, the noose dangling like a question mark. You climb the steps, your legs weak beneath you. The hangman places the hood over your head, plunging you into darkness. The rough hemp of the noose is tightened around your neck. There are no last words, no witty farewells. There is only the sound of your own heart hammering in your ears, the smell of the crowd and the feel of the rough wood beneath your feet. The trapdoor opens, there's a sudden violent drop, a sharp, brutal crack, and then nothing. But your punishment isn't over. In death you become a symbol. Your body isn't given a proper burial. It's hung in a gibbet, an iron cage, and left to swing at the mouth of the river, where every entering ship can see it. The tides rock you back and forth. The birds pick at your flesh. The elements slowly reduce you to a skeleton, a stark white warning to every sailor who dreams of the black flag. This is the pirate's retirement plan, not a beach and a bottle of rum, but a cage and a crowd of gawkers. You wanted to be remembered? Congratulations, you're a landmark, a lesson, a rotting reminder that the sea's freedom is an illusion. And the price for believing it is a short, brutal life and a very, very public death. The noose has taken its toll, the gibbets swing in the harbour breeze, and the legends are already being spun in the taverns. The brutal, short lives are over, but the myths are just beginning their long, immortal lives. We've seen the gritty truth, but what about the famous names, the ones who supposedly defined piracy? It's time to peel back the layers of legend and see the far more interesting and far more human reality hiding beneath. The truth is, the most famous pirates are often the ones whose stories were twisted the most, polished by time and terror into something barely recognizable. Let's start with the big one, Blackbeard, the monster. The legend says he was a demon in human form, weaving slow-burning matches into his massive beard to wreathe his face in sulphurous smoke, a walking embodiment of terror. He supposedly shot his own first mate to remind the crew of his ruthlessness. The reality? Edward Teach was a brilliant psychological tactician. The smoking beard was theatre. A performance designed to paralyze his prey with fear before a single shot was fired. He rarely killed unnecessarily. Why would he? A dead merchant captain can't tell you where the real treasure is hidden. That story about shooting his first mate? Probably propaganda spread by the authorities to paint him as an inhuman monster. The real Blackbeard wasn't a mindless brute. He was a master of stagecraft who understood that the most powerful weapon wasn't a cannon, but a well-cultivated reputation for being the devil himself. Then there's Calico, Jack Rackham. The legend is all about his flamboyant style and his famous female crewmates, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. He's the dandy, the romantic figure. The reality? Jack was kind of a failure. He was a quartermaster who got the captaincy by mutinying against the competent Charles Vane. His career was short and not particularly profitable. He was captured not in an epic sea battle, but when his crew was too drunk to fight off a Spanish patrol. His greatest legacy wasn't his plunder. It was the sensational trial of Bonny and Read that turned him into a tabloid footnote. The flamboyant clothes? A desperate attempt to project an image of success he never really achieved. He was all hat and no cattle, a pirate poser whose legend was cemented by the women in his crew, not by his own prowess. And what about the pirate code? The legend, thanks to movies, is a thick leather-bound book of elaborate, noble-sounding rules. The reality, as we've seen, was a single, practical page of scrawled articles focused on preventing internal conflict and ensuring everyone got paid. There was no parley rule, no right to a trial before being attacked. That's pure Hollywood. The real code was a business contract, not a chivalric vow. It was about preventing the strong from preying on the weak within the crew, so they could more effectively prey on everyone else. The legend of buried treasure is perhaps the most enduring and the most ridiculous. The image of a pirate carefully mapping out an island, digging a deep hole, and hiding a chest for a future that never comes. It's almost entirely fiction. Why? Because pirates were, by and large, terrible with money. They spent their shares as fast as they got them, in the ports we just talked about. What would be the point of burying it? Their lives were violent and short. They lived in the moment. The only documented case of a pirate maybe burying significant treasure was Captain Kidd, and he did it to use as a bargaining chip for a pardon, not for a rainy day. For the average pirate, the concept of saving for the future was a joke. The future was next week, and it probably contained a noose. Perhaps the most sanitized legend is that of walking the plank. It's so iconic, but there's almost no historical evidence that it was a common practice. Why go through the theatrical trouble of setting up a plank when it was far easier, faster and quieter to just clap a man in irons and throw him over the side? Or if you were feeling slightly more merciful, maroon him. The plank is a Victorian invention, a dramatic flourish added to stories to make piracy seem more gentlemanly and less like the blunt, brutal murder it actually was. And the Jolly Roger itself, the skull and crossbones. The legend is a unified symbol of terror. The reality was a messy, personalized form of branding. Every captain had his own version. Edward England flew a skull above crossed bones. Black Bart Roberts flew an image of himself standing on two skulls, labeled ABH and AMH, a Barbadian's head and a Martinican's head, a specific threat to the governors of those islands who had tried to hunt him. The flags were less about a unified identity and more about targeted psychological warfare, sending a specific, terrifying message to a specific enemy. So what are we left with? We're left with men, not monsters. Desperate, clever, flawed and violent men who lived brutal, short lives in a world that offered them few alternatives. The legends give us demons and dandies, romantic rebels and treasure-hoarding eccentrics. The reality gives us something far more compelling. Humans, people who chose a life of violent uncertainty over one of grinding oppression, and who, for a brief, bloody moment, managed to carve out their own strange, flawed version of democracy on the rolling deck of a wooden ship. The truth isn't as clean as the legend, it's not as pretty, but it's real, and in its own damp, weevil-infested, blood-stained way, it's so much more fascinating. The noose has taken its toll. The gibbets swing in the harbour breeze, and the legends are already being spun in the taverns. The brutal, short lives are over, but the myths are just beginning their long, immortal lives. We've seen the gritty truth, but what about the famous names? The ones who supposedly defined piracy? It's time to peel back the layers of legend and see the far more interesting and far more human reality hiding beneath. The truth is, the most famous pirates are often the ones whose stories were twisted the most, polished by time and terror into something barely recognizable. Let's start with the big one. Blackbeard, the monster. The legend says he was a demon in human form, weaving slow-burning matches into his massive beard to wreathe his face in sulphurous smoke, a walking embodiment of terror. He supposedly shot his own first mate to remind the crew of his ruthlessness. The reality? Edward Teach was a brilliant psychological tactician. The smoking beard was theatre, a performance designed to paralyze his prey with fear before a single shot was fired. He rarely killed unnecessarily. Why would he? A dead merchant captain can't tell you where the real treasure is hidden. That story about shooting his first mate? Probably propaganda spread by the authorities to paint him as an inhuman monster. The real Blackbeard wasn't a mindless brute. He was a master of stagecraft who understood that the most powerful weapon wasn't a cannon, but a well-cultivated reputation for being the devil himself. Then there's Calico Jack Rackham. The legend is all about his flamboyant style and his famous female crewmates, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. He's the dandy, the romantic figure. The reality? Jack was kind of a failure. He was a quartermaster who got the captaincy by mutinying against the competent Charles Vane. His career was short and not particularly profitable. He was captured not in an epic sea battle, but when his crew was too drunk to fight off a Spanish patrol. His greatest legacy wasn't his plunder. It was the sensational trial of Bonny and Read that turned him into a tabloid footnote. The flamboyant clothes? A desperate attempt to project an image of success he never really achieved. He was all hat and no cattle, a pirate poser whose legend was cemented by the women in his crew, not by his own prowess. And what about the pirate code? The legend, thanks to movies, is a thick leather-bound book of elaborate, noble-sounding rules. The reality, as we've seen, was a single, practical page of scrawled articles focused on preventing internal conflict and ensuring everyone got paid. There was no parley rule, no right to a trial before being attacked. That's pure Hollywood. The real code was a business contract, not a chivalric vow. It was about preventing the strong from preying on the weak within the crew, so they could more effectively prey on everyone else. The legend of buried treasure is perhaps the most enduring and the most ridiculous. The image of a pirate carefully mapping out an island, digging a deep hole, and hiding a chest for a future that never comes. It's almost entirely fiction. Why? Because pirates were, by and large, terrible with money. They spent their shares as fast as they got them, in the ports we just talked about. What would be the point of burying it? Their lives were violent and short. They lived in the moment. The only documented case of a pirate maybe burying significant treasure was Captain Kidd, and he did it to use as a bargaining chip for a pardon, not for a rainy day. For the average pirate, the concept of saving for the future was a joke. The future was next week, and it probably contained a noose. Perhaps the most sanitized legend is that of walking the plank. It's so iconic, but there's almost no historical evidence that it was a common practice. Why go through the theatrical trouble of setting up a plank when it was far easier, faster and quieter to just clap a man in irons and throw him over the side? Or if you were feeling slightly more merciful, maroon him. The plank is a Victorian invention, a dramatic flourish added to stories to make piracy seem more gentlemanly and less like the blunt, brutal murder it actually was. And the Jolly Roger itself, the skull and crossbones, the legend is a unified symbol of terror. The reality was a messy, personalized form of branding. Every captain had his own version. Edward England flew a skull above crossed bones. Black Bart Roberts flew an image of himself standing on two skulls, labeled ABH and AMH, a Barbadian's head and a Martinican's head, a specific threat to the governors of those islands who had tried to hunt him. The flags were less about a unified identity and more about targeted psychological warfare, sending a specific, terrifying message to a specific enemy. So what are we left with? We're left with men, not monsters. Desperate, clever, flawed and violent men who lived brutal, short lives in a world that offered them few alternatives. The legends give us demons and dandies, romantic rebels and treasure-hoarding eccentrics. The reality gives us something far more compelling. Humans, people who chose a life of violent uncertainty over one of grinding oppression, and who, for a brief, bloody moment, managed to carve out their own strange, flawed version of democracy on the rolling deck of a wooden ship. The truth isn't as clean as the legend, it's not as pretty, but it's real, and in its own damp, weevil-infested, blood-stained way, it's so much more fascinating. The final tally is in. The math is brutal, it's simple. A short life, a brutal life, a life measured in weevils and wounds, ending in a cage or at the bottom of the sea. The truth about the Golden Age of Piracy is a damp, miserable and unequivocal thing. So why? Why does the myth persist? Why does the Jolly Roger still fly in our imaginations, not as a threat, but as an invitation to adventure? The reality, the actual historical record, has been buried and rotted away. But the echo is forever. Today, we're going to move past the grim finality of the historical ledger and turn to the strange, enduring power of the lie. The myth persists because the reality is unbearable. It's too grim, too pathetic, too human. We don't want to remember the pirate as a desperate, toothless wretch shivering in his own filth. We want the rogue, the rebel, the man who looked at the entire ordered world, the kings, the merchants, the admirals, and told them all to go to hell. The pirate myth is a perfect fantasy of agency. In a world where most of us feel like cogs in a massive machine, the pirate represents the ultimate cog that broke loose and started its own, more exciting machine. We don't see the dampness of the ship's hold, we see the sparkle of a fictional sea. We don't smell the gangrene, we smell the salt and the gunpowder. The myth is a beautiful, intoxicating filter placed over a photograph of a corpse. It's also a story we tell ourselves about freedom. Now, the pirate's freedom, as we've seen, was largely an illusion. It was the freedom to choose your preferred method of a gruesome death. But the idea is intoxicating. No taxes, no bosses, no rules beyond the ones you and your crew write for yourselves. A direct democracy where your vote and your cutlass have equal weight. It's a powerful fantasy, especially for those at the bottom of society's ladder. The myth isn't about historical accuracy. It's about a deep, human longing for control over our own lives. In legend, the pirate is the master of his fate, the captain of his soul. In reality, he was a slave to the wind, the worm, and the whims of his often mutinous crew. And then, let's be honest, there's the aesthetic. The myth is just cooler. A gleaming cutlass is far more photogenic than a tar-stained rope. A chest overflowing with gold is infinitely more exciting than a barrel of rusty nails. A dashing captain with a parrot on his shoulder is a much better main character than a paranoid former carpenter with a mouth full of rot. Over the centuries, we have polished the rust and blood off the reality and left behind a shiny, marketable brand of rebellion. We've turned a floating slum into a themed restaurant. The ugliness has been curated away, leaving only the parts that sell movie tickets and Halloween costumes. Ironically, the very civilized world that hunted them down also helped build their legends. The authorities needed the pirates to be monsters. They had to be portrayed as subhuman, satanic, a force of pure evil that justified any amount of state-sanctioned violence to suppress. The pamphlets, the trial reports, the sermons delivered from pulpits, they all exaggerated the cruelty, the debauchery, the godlessness of these men. They created the very demons they sought to destroy, because you need a spectacular villain to justify a spectacular public execution. In making them monsters, they inadvertently made them immortal. Nobody writes ballads about a moderately troublesome thief, but they write them about Blackbeard, the devil of the sea. But perhaps the most profound reason the myth endures is because of the tiny, fragile grain of truth at its center. Buried under all the Hollywood nonsense and Victorian romance, there was something revolutionary happening on those ships. It was the share, the vote, the compensation for injury. However brutal and short their lives were, for a fleeting moment, these men, the dregs of society, the press-ganged, the formerly enslaved, created a micro-society that was, in its own bloody way, more fair than the one they left behind. A sailor in the Royal Navy was little more than property, subject to the whip and whims of his captain. A pirate, on the other hand, had a say. He voted for his captain. He had an agreed-upon share of any prize. If he lost a limb in battle, he was compensated from the crew's general fund. It was a twisted, violent, and doomed experiment, but it was an experiment in fairness. That spark of something different, something almost democratic in a world of absolute monarchs, is what gives the legend its lasting power. It wasn't the treasure, it was the principle, so the echo fades, but it never dies. You can still hear it if you listen closely. It's not in the sound of clashing swords in a movie, but in the quiet sigh of any person who feels trapped by their life. It's in the daydream of just walking away from it all. The pirate myth is the ultimate what if. What if I said no? What if I took what I wanted? What if I was truly, completely free? The reality of piracy is the answer to that question, and it's a horrifying one. But we don't want the answer, we want the question, we want the dream. The sea forgets. It swallows ships and men and memories alike. The wood rots, the iron rusts. The bones turn to coral. The reality of the golden age of piracy is gone. Return to the salt and the silence from which it came. All that's left is the story we've chosen to tell. A story not of damp and disease, but of freedom and fortune. A beautiful, magnificent, glorious lie. And we will cling to it forever, because the truth is just too dark, too damp, and too real. The pirate is dead and gone. Long live the pirate. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration of myth and reality interesting, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into the stories we tell ourselves. We'll see you next time.